Hello, I'm Dr. Erin Holder with Veterinary Compassion Project, and I'm here with Dr. Judy Morgan. It's such an honor to be talking to you, Dr. Morgan. You don't need any introduction, but I will certainly give you one that anyway. So Dr. Judy Morgan has had 40 years of experience as an integrative veterinarian, acupuncturist, chiropractor, food therapist, best-selling author, international speaker, podcast host, which I had so much fun being on your podcast a few months ago, and owner of Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets. And her goal is to change the lives of pets by educating and empowering pet parents worldwide in the use of natural healing therapies and minimizing the use of chemicals, vaccinations, and poor quality processed food. And before I go further, thank you. What a wonderful and beautiful addition to our veterinary world. So thank you for your goals. She's won many, many accolades, and she has some best-selling books, Raising Naturally Healthy Pets, a guide to helping your pets live longer and keeping your pets naturally healthy, holistic care and nutrition for dogs and cats. So 2 great books available on Amazon. Thank you so much, Dr. Morgan, for being here with us. I'm so excited. You're my first interview. It's really official. It's happening.
Oh boy.
Yay.
Yay. Got to start somewhere.
Got to start somewhere. Well, as you know, I have created a veterinary compassion project from my own healing and dealing with compassion fatigue and burnout in veterinary medicine. And my goal is to help other people in the veterinary field. And so we're going to start with just a conversation about it in general and bring it to the public's awareness and just allow veterinarians and veterinary staff members to know that they're not alone in suffering with this, that we all are touched by it. So what would you say, just briefly your background, what drew you into veterinary medicine to begin with?
I was influenced by my riding instructor's daughter, who was a veterinarian. And when I was 13, my show pony couldn't function. He was not rideable anymore, and he was very lame, and we were looking at having to put him down, and he was only 18. And she came after she graduated from vet school. She came home for the summer, and she was an equine practitioner, and she said, well, I can do a neurectomy on his front feet to make him comfortable enough to be turned out in the pasture with his buddies and let him live out his life. And not rideable, but certainly comfortable. And she actually did it there on the farm and let me help. And I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. She, at the time, it seemed like a fortune because I didn't grow up in a wealthy family and it was $600. She basically charged me the bare minimum. And I was just blown away. And I said, I want to be able to save animals. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to find an answer where an answer doesn't look like it exists. And so from that point on, I was in 8th grade. And from that point on, I was 100% focused. Beeline. I did my undergrad in 3 years instead of 4. I graduated in 3 years by going summers and winters and everything I could do. And it was just very laser focused.
Don't you find that to be such a commonality? I wasn't like you. I didn't want to go to vet school when I was little, but almost everybody in my vet school class did. They wanted to be veterinarians since they were really little, and they lived singularly focused to get to that goal.
Yeah.
So that's
I have no idea what I would have. In 8th grade,
That was
I
just
had
it
no idea. I had
for
no
you.
idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, but all of a sudden the light bulb went off, and I'm a science and math nerd, so made sense.
Perfect fit. Yeah. And every one of us going in because we're, of course, have the same goal is to save animals and help all the animals for sure.
Yep. And
So,
I
yeah,
think so many of us, but especially when we're young and we make that decision, we don't realize that it's, I love animals. I want to work with animals. And we don't realize that we really have to love people
yes.
because there's somebody on the other end of that leash or the other end of that lead shank that is is running the show. And so I think that for a lot of people, they don't take in that into consideration
Yeah.
enough. Like, you really kind of have to be a people person. And I'm not, and, believe it or not, I'm actually an introvert. I'm a situational extrovert.
Gotta do it when you gotta
When
do it.
exactly, when I have to be. And you can put me on a stage in front of 10,000 people and I'm all over the place and I love it. But a one-on-one conversation, I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And in vet school, like, we're not even armed with that knowledge of how to deal, and we're dealing with some of, like, the most traumatic conversations,
yes.
and we're not taught how to handle those feelings with our with the animal patients, but with that human to human contact. Like,
You
how do we
know,
handle those emotions?
there was an optional course that I took in my senior, might have been my junior year, might have been senior, where they role played client
Oh,
veterinarian interactions. And it
wow.
was so uncomfortable, but I was so glad we had to do it.
Yes.
So they would come in, instructors would come in and they would give us these really weird scenarios of things that we had never heard of. Like, I remember the one of mine that I remember best, it was this. They were pretending to be an equine owner and they came in and they said they had a mare that had a uterine infection and they wanted me to instill colostrum into the uterus to help heal the infection. And my brain is going, what? I have never heard of this.
Wow.
And so, after I kind of went, I was like,
What?
well, but it made me think on my feet and it made me say to this
Yeah,
owner, well, I am not familiar with doing that as a procedure. Let me go do a little bit of research on that. I'll get right back to you on that and we'll see if this is something that might help and would be viable. And then we'll have a
perfect,
conversation. But,
perfect.
you know, it, if I hadn't done that kind of role playing, and I
Yes.
mean, and we had to do this every day with these weird things thrown at us.
That's amazing.
And then we had to watch our classmates also go through it. And then we had to
Mhm.
critique what they said or how they could have handled the situation or how they didn't handle the situation or what they did great about the situation. And I have never talked to a graduate, any other graduates who have had that kind of class, and I thought it
No.
was because on clinics they would
Genius.
send us in to to like on surgery rotation. Okay, here you go. The
Yeah,
client's here with their pet. You go in, you do the physical exam, you get all the
right.
information. There's not even an instructor in the room with you. So
Exactly.
if nobody is critiquing what you're doing, nobody's watching what you're doing, nobody's helping you get through it, and it's kind of like being thrown to the wolves. So, in my opinion, there needs to be a clinician in the rooms with these students when they're having these. And I don't know how they do it now. I graduated a long 40 years ago. Um, but there needs to be somebody, some mentor that is listening to the conversation that the student's having and then giving them constructive feedback.
I
And
exactly.
I don't know if they do that or not. I just know that that was one of the best classes I ever had. I wish I'd
And
had some financial classes to know how to
oh,
run a clinic. That would have helped.
amen. That's a whole nother topic. Yeah. Here's your 2 hours of business. Go along,
We
open
got
up your
none.
own business. Yeah. And we didn't get any of that person to person contact. So that's awesome. Like,
Yeah,
just the introduction, just to see a different scenario that can be thrown at you is really, really cool.
yeah.
So, and I'm out 20 years, more than 24 years now. So I'm the same way. Like, I don't know what the curriculum is currently in vet school, but gosh, I think we can incorporate so much more. But anyway, so what
I think they're
surprise?
so into getting all the nitty-gritty of the science
Yes.
that we we lose all the common sense stuff.
Yep. It's true.
I and I think that the brains are just being overwhelmed with medical information because
Yes.
it just keeps expanding and keeps expanding.
So true.
But that's the kind of stuff you can always look up. You can't
Right.
look up, how do I have this conversation?
Yes. Yeah. How do I have this conversation with my employee, with my staff member? Like, this is exhausting and stressful
Yeah,
and confrontations, and yeah, for
yeah.
sure. So, kind of along those lines, what surprised you the most about veterinary medicine? What were you least prepared for, I think, is the question I'm asking.
I really hated being an employee. Um, I really hated it. I stayed at my first job for a year and a half, and it was a really small teeny tiny 900 square foot clinic with 2 doctors and 2 exam rooms. Our storage closet was also the x-ray room. Our another storage room was the surgery. We didn't have an IV catheter in the building.
Oh man.
And so that's what I practiced for the first year and a half. And I said, there's got to be something better than this. The great
Mhm.
thing about it was I didn't have any emergency call. And by the way, my salary was $20,000 a year. Woohoo. And I was way in debt.
Yeah.
But at that time, 1984, the maximum debt you were allowed to have, college debt, was $25,000.
Oh
Now,
wow.
$25,000 in 1984, I think I looked it up one
Wow.
day, and now it would be like
What's the
125,000. But
equivalent?
that's
Yeah.
still a drop in the bucket compared to what these students are coming out with. And I think there needs
So
to be a cap on that,
absolutely.
because it was very, very stressful. So I left that job after a year and a half. Partly I was commuting over an hour each way, and it just didn't make sense. So I found
Mhm.
a more up-to-date clinic. But that boss was very difficult, really difficult. He fired me for being pregnant, which you could do in 1989. You cannot do that now.
Wow.
So that was difficult. And he would do things like increase my hours, but I was on salary and I wouldn't get any extra. It's like, okay, you were working every other Saturday. Now you're working every Saturday. You know, I'm like, do I get more money for that? No. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thanks. You know, and I had a
Yeah.
contract. What was I going to do?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much I hated veterinary medicine at that point. I stayed at
Mhm.
that clinic for 4.5 years till I got pregnant and got fired. I didn't realize how much I hated veterinary medicine until I went to a local college. I was invited to speak to the pre-vet students about my career. And so I got a bunch of slides together and slides of the clinic and surgeries and this and that and the other thing. And I gave my talk for half an hour. And when I finished, the instructor walked up to me and said, if you hate your job so much, why do you do it? And I went, oh my
Whoa.
gosh, did that come across like I didn't realize how much I hated my job.
Wow.
I will say that I was so depressed all the
Yeah.
time. And so I see these, I joined the Not One More Vet Facebook
Yes.
page. There's like 30,000 people on there that are all standing like this.
Yes.
It's very sad. But when
Yes.
I remember back to when I was out of school for that first 5, 6 years, I was taking antidepressants,
Yeah.
and that's not me. Like
Yeah.
I'm like a drug-free person. I don't do that.
Mhm.
And what I will say is it stopped the crying, but it
Yeah.
also stopped the laughing. It stopped the joy.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at my husband at the time and saying, I have no affect. I'm flat. Like there's no joy in my life. There's no sadness anymore either. So
Yeah.
that was great. But I wasn't willing to live my life that way.
Yep.
So getting fired for being pregnant was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because I was in a toxic work environment.
Mhm.
Um, and so then I did relief work after I had my son. I took 3 months off and then I was really broke. So I had to do something. What was the easiest thing to do? Well, I'll do relief work. So I worked for a relief company for a little while. And then I said, you know what? I can do this on my own. Why am I giving them part of my paycheck?
Mhm.
I'll just send out my resume to every veterinarian within a 100-mile radius.
Mhm.
And I did. And so I did relief work as my own boss for 5 years. And I got offers everywhere I went.
Oh,
You
I
need to
bet.
come work for us full time.
Yeah.
And I almost took one. The guy offered me an exorbitant salary at the time. So this is like 1992. Um, he offered me $75,000, which was
Whoa.
unheard of at
Whoa.
that time.
Yeah.
So I said, ugh, and it was a long commute. And he said, well, you can't have this long a commute. You're going to have to move closer to the clinic. And I was like, well, if the job works, I'm willing to do that.
Mhm.
And so I said, I will give you 3 days. I will come work for you for 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, I will tell you whether I will take this job.
Oh, smart.
Halfway through the first day, I went, oh, hell no. There is no way. It was horrible, really horrible. Like the caseload that they wanted to throw at the doctors was over the top crazy. And I am very
Ah.
fast and I am very efficient. Like, all these people who say, I spend 2 hours at the end of the day writing up my notes. My notes get written up while the appointment is in the room. Everything is finished. Like, I don't understand these people that are writing up their notes 3 days later. How do you remember what you said to somebody 3 days later? Even at the end of the day, after you've
Right.
seen 30 patients, how do you remember that? Like these doctors have to figure out how to get it all done. So that's part of their stress, because they're like, well, I'm staying for 2
Yeah.
hours at the end of the, and I had a doctor who did
Right.
that. And part of her problem was her writing was very slow because she printed like a typewriter, and it
Oh,
was the neatest, most
perfectly
wonderful,
neat.
like perfectly neat. I'm like, oh my gosh, her records are so lovely. But it would take her 2 to 3 hours. She'd be there at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and my staff I never wanted one person leaving the building alone. And
Yeah.
so somebody always had to stay. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm paying somebody to sit there and babysit you.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, so I didn't take the job. I knew halfway through, because after seeing a million patients all day, 9 o'clock at night, I'm finishing up appointments after starting at 7 in the morning. And then they had 50 animals in the hospital that I had to go
Absolutely
check
not.
on. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so literally, yeah, you're paying me $75,000, but my work day is 20 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
And that's a great advocate for new kids coming out. Spend more time at at the potential job, spend a good amount of time. Don't walk in for an
Have
interview.
an
I think
interview and go,
that's what I did for my first job. I walked in, had an interview, looked around, was like, meh, okay, I think this will work. Although I always had my sights, I had already bought a building to open up a practice. I knew I wasn't going to stay long, but that doesn't matter. Like I should have spent more time, because it ended up to be a pretty crazily horrific, my first experience too. Like
yep.
crazy woman throwing things at people, screaming. Like we'd have to go calm the clients down because she heard the screaming in yeah, it was really bananas. So
yeah, after I did relief work for 5 years, I had one clinic in South Jersey and I was living in North Jersey. So I was commuting over an hour each way. And there's a long involved story, but we ended up, the doctor that I was doing the relief work for, we wanted to open a satellite clinic. I was going to go open the clinic by myself, and because it came across my desk that it was for sale, and I said, I don't feel good going 5 miles down the road. I've been doing relief work here for 3 years now, and I have my own following of clients.
yeah.
So I went to him and I said, hey, this practice is for sale, and I don't want to go behind your back. Do you want to do this together? Because
Nice.
that's just my ethics.
Yes.
And so we opened it together. I was thinking it would be 50-50. No, it was 70-30. He got 70, I got the 30. But it got my foot in the door to ownership.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were partners for 10 years. And then at the end of
Nice.
10 years, I bought out the satellite clinic and it became mine. And then he had his clinic 5 miles up the road. But at that point, I had become holistic. And so I was doing integrated medicine. So we weren't even really competing with each
Yeah.
other. And we're still friends. It's been
Nice.
30 years, we're still friends. So, so it can work out, and having my own clinic. And then I did move back to South Jersey, because commuting and owning it was just way crazy.
Yeah.
But owning my own clinic made a huge amount of difference for me. So my partner, we got along really well, but if the phone would ring at my clinic because I always stayed at the satellite clinic and he pretty much stayed at the other one. When the phone would ring at my clinic and they would say, Bob's on the phone for you, literally my heart would race and I'd be having a panic attack. And then, he'd get on the phone and he'd say, hey, I've got this client here, wants me to do this ACL surgery. Can you send me up the x-rays? Or, it would be just something so silly.
Mhm.
And I just realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm having a panic, because sometimes he called and he was mad about something.
Yeah.
But, half the time it was, what color paint should we use?
Yeah. Right.
And I'm like, I cannot be, my personality does not allow me to work for somebody else.
Yep.
It just doesn't.
Yeah. And that
So
was
I never thought I would own
freeing.
my own clinic, but I just realized that if I couldn't be in charge, I was always going to be scared and miserable.
And that's the one side, like you want to be in control of everything. That was certainly me. I want to own my own clinic. I want to grow it. I want to be the person that's responsible for everything. And then the flip side of owning your own clinic is like, wow, we didn't get any training for this. We don't know how to be an HR manager. We don't know
Wow,
how to
I
hire
can't
and
make
fire.
payroll this week. This stinks.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Head in the toilet, vomiting. How am I going to
I
survive?
spent 15 years with wondering how to make payroll every
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for a lot of young veterinarians say there is no way I would want to own my own clinic. And yes, I worked a lot of 80-hour weeks. I worked 100-hour weeks, but I was also really, really committed. If one of my good clients needed a C-section on their pet and it was 7 o'clock at night, I always made it optional for my
You're doing
staff.
it.
I
Yeah.
would always say to my staff, anybody who wants to stay, one, I'm making the client help us rub puppies. Two, the client's going to go get you coffee or dinner or whatever it is that you want. Three, they are going to pay a $200 an hour overtime fee for us to stay here. And anybody who wants to stay, it's voluntary. You're getting paid time and a half overtime. Anybody who wants to go home can go home. And I always had plenty of people who said, "Yeah, I'll stay, I'll help,"
Wanted to get,
because we were committed to those people. But my clinic varied anywhere from one doctor to four doctors.
yeah.
And the times when there was one doctor, it was me. And so I would make modifications. Like we just closed on weekends. I'm like, I can't work 5 days a week, long days, and be here on
And do the weekend.
Saturday.
Absolutely.
So we're just closing on Saturday. And everybody's like, "Oh, you can't do that." And I'm like, "Watch me."
Yep.
And then in South Jersey, back then, uh, literally, and it's still this way a lot there, the receptionist is not allowed to, client service representative, whatever we're calling them now.
It's a lot of,
They're not allowed to turn off the phones and put them on the answering machine until it stops ringing. So
oh, well,
if clients are still and anybody who calls has to be seen that day. So if they're calling at 8:30 at night because you haven't turned your
what?
phones off,
Yeah.
they're going to get there at 9 o'clock. And so talk about Dr. Burnout. Well, so I was the first one who said, we're not doing it this way. We are
Awesome.
not. So I stayed open till 7, 2 nights a week. The other 3 were open till 6. And over time, it got to, we're closing at 6 o'clock every day. Like my staff needs to go home. And, there
Yeah.
were a lot of days where, okay, we had an emergency surgery, we had this, that, or the other thing. But one of the things that I discovered, and we have emergency services that we could send people to. One of the things that I discovered was that when the phone rang after 5:30 in the evening, 90% of the time, it was not our client. They didn't have any money and they had a
Oh,
disaster.
oh my.
And that was one of the biggest stress points in our clinic.
Yes.
And I
Absolutely.
said, nope, we're not doing that. If they call at 5:30 with a disaster and they're not our client, they're not going to be our client right now.
Right.
We can, if it's a disaster, we're sending them to the emergency service. If it's something that can wait till tomorrow, we'll get them in tomorrow. But you have to set boundaries, and I think that is part of the problem,
It is.
that there's no boundaries.
Yep.
Um, and I had no problem firing clients. Like
Mhm.
you say, like you get those clients who are sweet as pie to the doctor
Mhm.
and nasty, nasty to
Absolutely.
the lower staff. And I would just send them a letter and say, here's the yellow page. This was back when we had the yellow pages.
Yeah.
Here's the yellow pages, the list of all the veterinarians in our area. Please choose one and let us know which one
Where
you
we
would
can
like
send
your
your
records
records.
sent to. And we
Yes.
wouldn't give the records to the client because in the records, it would state exactly what happened that
Yeah.
caused us to fire them.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to pre-warn whoever they chose. Listen, it's in the record right there. It says what they did, what we did about it, and why. And then you decide if you want to take them on.
And the thing about that, I love how you said that because it took me years to get to that point. Because when I first started my clinic, I was so afraid
Of not
of,
making money.
yeah, and of just like getting a bad reputation, or
Mhm.
now with Google reviews and all this. And
Yep.
there's so much fear and all that. And so you don't have that freedom to say, hey, buddy, I don't really need
You
you or your
you
crap
got
that
to
you're
get
bringing to
past
my
it.
clinic. So
Pretty
you
much everybody
do.
I fired wrote bad reviews.
Yeah, we just have to empower. Yeah, we have to empower our young
You
people
just
to believe in
kind of
themselves.
go,
And
there's two sides to every story. And I would,
yeah,
at the beginning, we would kind of fight back, and then it would just turn into ugly. It's like everything on social media. There's two opinions, and you're not going to change the other person's opinion. So
exactly.
why bother? So we just got to the point where we sort of had a standard answer where, the beliefs of the client and our beliefs didn't mesh. It was some little standard answer
Yeah.
that, just kind of gave us a voice without being a rebuttal. And then if they wanted to keep arguing, they could, but nobody was going to argue with them, which takes the wind out of their sails. So
Yeah.
you have to be willing to do that. And so I think that's a problem for employed veterinarians, that they are not given the freedom to fire clients. And I
Oh,
see that a
yeah.
lot on that
Mhm.
Not One More Vet page,
Yes.
where they're like, this client is just extremely rude and I do not want to see them
Abusive
anymore.
sometimes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
abusive, and they're not given the ability to say no.
Mhm.
So maybe I'm making a pitch for own your own clinic, start your own gig, do a house call practice, set your own hours, do it your way. Um, I don't know, but you
It
know,
worked for you. But what do you feel like? Because I agree, that was me. I was like, I'm doing this my way. I'm doing this my way. But it comes with its own set of challenges.
oh
What was
yeah.
the biggest challenge for you owning your own practice?
A year into owning, after I borrowed $1 million to buy out my partner. So
Mhm.
here's this clinic we both put $20,000 into and took out. I mean, it was cheap. We took out like $150,000 mortgage.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cheap because it was an old barn that literally was like falling down. And my business partner loved to do construction. He would just do it on the side because he loved it. So he did all
Yeah.
the rehab. So we got in really cheap, but I helped build that practice up and then had to pay $1 million to buy out his 70%. So we're like,
Hmm.
maybe if I just taken my 20,000 to begin with and started, I would have been better off. I don't know.
That was a little brutal.
Yeah, it was a little brutal. And then 1 year in, I hadn't taken a paycheck in 6 weeks. We were
Ah,
making over $1 million a year. I hadn't taken a paycheck. I was struggling to make payroll. I had no
yep,
money in the bank.
yep,
And I was like this.
yep.
And I got a phone call, a cold call from a consultant, Silken Consulting out in Oregon, Portland.
Mhm.
And they're because I had filled out something, and they're like, "You need us." I'm like, "Well, I need something." And they
Yep.
said, "Okay, it'll be $37,000." And I said, "What part of I don't have any money? I haven't taken a paycheck in 6 weeks. Do you not understand? Like, what?" I'm like, "Where am I getting $37,000?"
Right.
Now, I am a firm believer that my higher power, which for me is God, is always going to give me what I need.
Yeah.
And so they said, "We're going to call you back in 2 days. Here's an application you can fill out to borrow the money." I went, "Great, more money." And 2 days later, when they called me back, it was my birthday. And I happened to have a credit card that had a $37,000 limit.
Yep.
So that's a sign. And I said, "I'm putting this on my credit card." And it's like, it was better then. It was like a
Leap
15%
of
interest rate.
faith. Leap of
Leap
faith.
of faith. I said, "It's my
Yeah.
birthday. I need this."
Yep.
And within a week, we discovered my embezzling office manager,
Jesus.
and my staff of 13 went down to 8 because
I got chills. Yeah.
that's how much dead,
Inefficiency.
inefficient
Absolutely.
staff that I
Yeah.
had standing around.
Yeah.
So my payroll got cut in half, yay.
Yep.
And we went to court. Actually, my insurance company paid me back more than I got through the court system,
Oh, wow.
I was still out a bunch of money, but I was no longer leaking like a sieve.
Right.
So I those consultants were so good that I paid that credit card off within 2 months. That extra 37,000 paid off in 2 months, and then so that was like in August. And the following March, I was sitting in front of my cousin, the accountant's desk, saying, "Okay, well, what am I going to owe in taxes this year?" And
What do I need to buy? Because 'Cause I'm doing
he
so well.
he said, "You owe $44,000 in taxes." Now this is March, so it's past the point of being able to buy anything. And I went,
All right. Oh, got it.
I leapt across the desk. I'm like, "You're lucky I'm not strangling you right now. You're fired. This is my cousin." Um, and so I went back to the office and I pulled together my staff of like 8 people, and we had an office meeting. And I said, "Gang, we have a problem. Well, mostly I have a problem, but, but we're a team. So we have a problem."
I'm leaking it down to you.
I said, "We need $44,000 in 6 weeks over and above what we normally need to keep running." And I said, "So these are our goals, and this is what I need you to do. And I need you to be as efficient as possible. And I need to make sure that you don't miss any charges. And I need to make sure that you are being very good about telling people what they need. I don't want you to sell them something they don't need, but I want to make sure that you don't miss anything." Man, they pulled it together.
That's
And
awesome.
come April 15th, $44,000 check out the door. Now, I can't make this stuff up, and I get chills
No.
talking about it. This is you put it out to the universe, and the universe, whatever your belief is,
Yes.
brings it to you.
Yes, it does.
And so, and I think when I am on that Facebook group, everybody gets so mired down in negative, negative, negative. My
Mm,
husband sucks. My kids hate me. My dog's
mm,
sick. My horse is in the hospital. And everybody focuses on negative, 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 negative.
mhm.
One of the best things that I have done, I have a gratitude journal, and every day I'm going to write down 5 things that I am amazingly thankful for. And I don't care if it's, I was able to take a shower today. Like, and that was one of my ways to get through vet school. I would make I'm a list person, like, I love
Yeah.
lists. I would make a list that included take a shower, every single chapter that I had to read, every note that I had to rewrite, what every single thing. I had my 3 meals a day on my to-do list so that I could check it off and feel like I accomplished something. So having a list and
I
being
love
able to
this so
check
much.
things off and say, look what I accomplished today, instead of going home and going, oh my God, I didn't get anything done. It all sucked. Go home and say, look at all these things I got done today. And I am so grateful for X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I'm grateful that the sky is blue. Sometimes I'm grateful that it's raining. Sometimes I'm grateful that I have a beautiful cutting flower garden in my backyard. I'm grateful that I got to spend time in the barn with my donkeys. I don't care
Dr.
what it
Judy,
is.
it is literally like I'm so excited to talk to you and hear all that you're saying because you're literally taking play from the Veterinary Compassion Project
Yay!
playbook. Like I love it. It's so exciting. So the first thing I want to say is I just want to go back just a little bit, which I too hired a consulting group to get me out of the quagmire that I was in.
Yep.
I too hired financial advisors. And part of Veterinary Compassion Project is stop thinking that you can do this all alone.
Exactly. You
It
can't. You
takes a
need
team of
experts.
people. Why do
Yes.
we feel like we need to be the best at everything all the time? Like, what is
Well,
this veterinary complex
I
that
think
we
part of it,
have?
we don't think we can afford to hire the right people. We don't think we can
I
afford the
agree.
consultants.
I
I
agree.
couldn't afford
I couldn't
$37,000.
either. I did the same thing. I did $50,000 out the door. And that was my
My
second consulting group that I had
Well,
hired because
and
my
my new
first one was
accountant
garbage.
was, like, literally the most expensive accountant I've ever worked with.
Right.
Uh, he saved me so much money. He was so amazing. He was so creative, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. You get what
Yeah,
you pay for."
that's right.
I mean, since I now am out of practice and have this business, I did hire a really bad accountant when I moved down here. That really sucked for 2 years.
Yeah, it happens. I went through
It
so
happens.
many of them. Yeah.
So, but I think people need to get out of their quagmire, and they need
Yes.
to just start looking for a rainbow somewhere, a
Yes.
ray of
I love this.
sunshine anywhere. Like,
Which
just
not anywhere, it's at the Veterinary Compassion Project Retreat
there you
because that's
go.
exactly what we talk about. So I'm super excited. April 4th through 6th in Petaluma, Northern California, in wine country. We're going to hope to get 100 veterinarians, veterinary staff members,
Be amazing.
anybody like just in animal care rescue, just to come together for a lot of different reasons. One is just to be together, just to be the act and art of healing and being together and understanding that we're in
Yep.
this together, and also introducing consulting groups, business consulting group, a financial consulting group to talk to them. And then also just like your gratitude journal and what you're doing. Like we see all these different books on what is compassion fatigue, what is burnout, but there's very little things to do about it. And so what I've spent the last few years together is putting together ways in which we can empower individuals, and we need to go back to the vet schools. We need to go start at the very beginning, and give these guys the tools that they need, maybe that empower them to say, just like what you were talking about, I can't do all this. Maybe we tell about the mistakes that we made so that they don't have to make this. They'll make their own, but they don't have to repeat ours. But anyway, I know that we're drawing to a close here with our time, and I am deeply appreciative that you came to talk to us about your own difficulties. Like, there's a lot of fun
There
and
have been many.
wonderful. Yes, but there's so many obstacles and mountains beyond mountains of owning a veterinary hospital, of being an employee of a veterinary
Mhm.
hospital that you don't love and agree with. And so
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much. And I hope to, and I know I will be in communication with you further as we go down this journey.
Thank you very much. And I do want to say we have an event in Florida and we have free scholarships for students. It's October 12th and 13th.
Oh, wonderful.
So vet tech students, veterinary students, if anybody wants to get a hold of us and get free tickets, it's an international event. We have 7 speakers from around the world.
Is it
Um,
holistic medicine?
it is holistic medicine.
Lovely.
And we are really focused this year on getting more younger veterinarians and veterinary students and veterinary technicians and technician students on board with going more toward holistic so that we can change the paradigm of what
Yes.
is going on in medicine, treating all this chronic disease instead of trying to heal things from the root cause. And so it was really important for us, and a lot of our vendors have given us money to sponsor students. So
Nice.
we have free scholarships. If you know any students or want to push that out there, we still have quite a few student spots available.
And one of my feelings on battling burnout and compassion fatigue is going that holistic route because you learn to not be faced with failures of Western medicine over and over. You get the
Yes.
joys of healing and foundational healing.
Yes,
So thank you
exactly.
for that. And hopefully you get all your spots filled and that we really do change the shift to more towards individual care instead of blanket care.
Exactly. Well, thank you
Thank you
very much. I
so
appreciate this
much.
opportunity.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dr. Judy.